I'm going to go ahead and hit record. Okay, so I'm going to get started. My name is Michelle Regan. I'm the managing director here at Inspired Instruction. Some of you, I recognize names, either having been to our webinars in the past or that we partner with throughout the school year. So welcome, everybody. I'm glad to have you today. Today, we're going to be doing our second webinar on the New Jersey Start Strong. If you attended our first webinar, the first section of this, the first probably 15 minutes, are going to be the new updates. And then the second half of the workshop this session is going to be what we talked about last time for anybody who's new. So the construct of the assessment, the what, the why, the best practices. Okay, so again, feel free, if you were here at our last webinar, to just stay for those beginning updates. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Again, my name is Michelle Regan, and today we're going to be covering anything that's new from NJDOE since the last time we did our webinar, which I believe was in June now. We're going to go over the test construct and how do we get ready in a way that, as we consider all test prep to be a healthy approach, if we're working toward the standards, then we are doing test prep, right? So this shouldn't be something that we do in isolation. All of the practices that you hear us talk about will be things that we recommend happen as the course of instruction. Okay. All righty. So let's get going here. All right, so we're going to get started and we're going to talk about when is this happening. So most of you probably already know, this probably isn't new, that September 13th to October 22nd is the window for the NJ Start Strong. For anybody who did take part in it last year in the fall, it was optional and it was piloted. But as you all know, this year, this is going to be mandatory for everybody. So your testing coordinator in your district should have set up the time frame within that you are going to be testing in your district. Okay, so that's not new. That's information we already knew. By this point, you may know when you're testing, and that can be helpful in terms of any kind of preparation or planning. The other thing I do want to share is that the state just released the dates for NJSLA. And we've been hearing different things from different people we talk to. So I did want to make it clear today, and I can share this testing schedule with you. You should be able to see my screen. And on the screen, you can see the Start Strong is here. But you'll also see that NJSLA for spring administration begins April 25th and goes to June 3rd for the computer administration window. There are different times that different groups do it if they have a block scheduling and things like that, or paper administration. Okay, I just wanted to share that because I've heard from a few different people that there were still rumors that there might not be an NJSLA in the spring, and I wanted to make it clear that from what we've been told, yes, there will. Okay. All right, what else do we know that's new? The testing, how it is different from NJSLA is the testing is completed in 45 to 60 minutes. So what that means is the ELA section will be a 45, 60-minute window that will happen during one class period. The math will be the same. The same goes for the science. We're going to be focusing on math and ELA today. That's really where we're putting our energy. Okay. All right. We know that they're only doing computer scored items. So this is really important to us because for ELA, that means that there is no writing section. Okay, hang on. I just got one question in the chat. It says, is the fall block NJSLA for math, for the math algebra retakes, or schools doing block scheduling? As far as I know, Valerie, there is a fall administration for people who do block scheduling, as well as typically another one in the spring. So I don't think it's just for retakes. Okay, again, so there are going to be questions that I can't answer fully for you today that you'll likely need to reach out to if you have a liaison, or your testing coordinator may know that. But I do know there are districts that have taken NJSLA in the fall because they do block scheduling. Okay. So this piece about computer scored items, And I probably should have said from the start, feel free to put any questions you have in chat or unmute, because as you know, if you've been to any of our sessions before, we really like to make it interactive, and I want to make sure I answer your specific questions if I can. Okay, so this idea that it's computer scored items only is what allows it to be so quick, right? So there's no writing section. There's also no math items, test items that require an open-ended response from students. So there's nothing that's going to be hand scored. Okay, so therefore that allows them to get you back the results very quickly. So we were told there were same day results. Okay, this is the student result. You will not get your class or grade level reports that same day, but we were being told that they're going to be, I'm trying to think of the word they used, not immediate feedback, but timely feedback. Okay, so you should be getting this information in a pretty quick turnaround, because the whole point of this was that it would be formative assessment to identify the gaps that students might have, help plan for accelerating learning, help plan for differentiation. So with that being the intent, the goal is to get that information to you very quickly. Okay. Okay, so I did mention this already, but I just wanted to kind of give you a visual. So there's going to be for ELA, one literary text, one informational text. Kids will have the EBSR and the TECRs. So your Part A, Part B questions, and your drag and drop those technology enhanced questions. Okay, there are no writing tasks and no open-ended math tasks. Okay, what else is new from the state? So if you have not yet been on the Meridian website, the New Meridian website, the New Jersey site now has Start Strong as a section. So if you look across the top, this is going to all look familiar. And now they have a Start Strong tab. Okay, I'm going to bring you to that website so that you can just take a look. Okay, and you can get here a couple different ways. You can go through my Pearson support. But if you click this Start Strong tab, it'll bring you to some information that's specific to this test. Okay, so just to scroll through and just give you a little lay of the land, they do have similar tutorials and practice tests that are here. These are not new. These are the same practice tests that you would have seen in the NJSLA tab. If you clicked that tab, there's the information that I shared with you that came out in July for from the state as their memo, their broadcast memo, the key dates that I shared with you. Anything your testing coordinator needs is here. Okay, so all good things for you. And then resources. So these may not be new for you either. However, now they say Start Strong on them. So you'll see all these math reference sheets, testing signs, and things like that. Okay, in terms of the questions, you're still going to use the same resource, and I'm going to identify those as we move forward. We know that this test, the Start Strong assessment, is made up of released items. So items that have already been used. They did not create new items for this test. Okay. Any questions so far? Okay, so just so that you know, if you were at our last webinar, everything we knew the last time we did this was based on what had been done in fall of 2020. There hadn't been firm information yet from the state. So I can be confident in saying to you today that what we received from the state is now informing this, in addition to what we know from those districts that did take the test in 2020. Okay. Okay, so for example, here's some of those resources. The different grade levels have different reference sheets that can be shared with the students. That can be of help. I think going forward, because kids are not tested this time of year in this fashion, right? So we do other benchmarks. You might do some of the other programs that you use in the beginning of the year. This is going to be new for kids. Now, the nice thing is it is so short. It's not going to be a cumbersome process that's going to take up lots of days, lots of time, but it is still something that kids haven't done before. So it's just kind of nice to give, make sure teachers have a heads up, make sure kids have a little bit of a heads up as well. Okay, what else is new? So this is an example of the by question score report. And one of our math experts worked with a district and they found this to be really, really valuable because they could literally go and look at the actual question to see where there were students succeeding or falling down. Now, obviously, the sample sizes were very small, so it didn't necessarily inform, you know, huge instructional decisions because only small groups of students took it, but it is helpful to look at in terms of what kinds of questions were asked, right? So we see that there were 6 questions on multiplication and division. There were 6 questions on fractions. And then we can identify students' proficiency. So it definitely did give us some information about, okay, we need to maybe spend some more time on fractions. Okay, as an example for this particular class. So I might stop here and ask anybody to unmute. If your district did take the fall administration that was optional, I'd love to hear your feedback about what you learned, the findings, the score reports. Is there anybody in this group that did take the fall administration? Okay, I'm not seeing anyone volunteer, so I'm assuming that's a no. We have, with all the districts that we work with, we only know of one of our own districts that we partner with that did participate. And Cheryl, I'm going to call on you if you don't mind. You said yes, you did take it. Did you find that there were things that were useful in terms of score reporting like this, or, you know, how did you use that information?
Well,
If you
we
don't mind.
down, and I was last year the math and science supervisor, as well as the English department supervisor for the high school. So we broke it down and actually shared it with the teachers, the score reports, and the categories played a big role in identifying where the gaps were. Like measurement in data seems to be a weakness among the math students. Let's say, I think it's called statistics when it comes to high school level. This is more like a lower level what you have out here,
Right.
but it is very interesting because it happens to also draw a parallel to the SATs. So in SATs, some of the subject matters that are not covered regularly in units and lessons, such as probability or
Okay.
statistics, also shows up in this test. So you can
Right.
tell where the gaps are a bit. And then what I particularly liked is the rubric at which they classified students as um, meeting expectations, exceeding expectations, or below expectations. So it wasn't a score, but it was very distinctive 3 groups of students where you know who needs most of the supports if you're doing an RTR program or something.
Absolutely. I'm going to share that slide in a moment, and I'm glad that you got to share your insight because, you know, hopefully the idea is that the feedback that we're giving to the state is we want data that's usable. We
Right.
want data that we can action. We want data that's easy to understand for our teachers.
Mm-hmm.
So kudos to you for sharing it with your teachers, because I know sometimes there is so much data and it's so cumbersome that it's difficult to actually sit down and do that work with teachers. But we find when we partner with districts and we do that kind of unpacking of this data, it is so helpful. It is so, so eye-opening and can really inform not just instructional decisions, but looking at the curriculum, to your point, like where are there gaps? Are there areas that we could do more of? Are there standards that are connected or categories that are connected that we could beef up?
Right.
Okay.
And it could be
And
for SGOs as well.
yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
it's
So I think the data is going to be useful. And I think part of what we're trying to do is send the message that this shouldn't be something that we're necessarily worried about. We certainly want to have a heads up about it, but that that the data can be very useful. It's super, super detailed. but they basically set out what are the instructional priorities for last year, knowing that instructional time would be interrupted and probably limited in some ways. Okay, so there's this awesome, huge document. I'm going to see if I can get to a slide that has some standards on it. Okay, so you can just take a quick look, but it's really, really nice because they talk about, especially for math, they do a really nice job of talking about what are some instructional considerations that I should be thinking about. Okay, so you can see very lengthy document and has those standards and those considerations. Okay, if I take the next step and go to what did the state share? The state went ahead and used that information. And so this is easy for you to find on the NJDOE website. It's under prerequisite concepts. Okay, they created, and you can see they reference in one of these documents, they reference the Achieve the Core document. Okay, and you can basically go on here and search by grade level. Just gonna, okay, let's keep moving along. So I showed you the priority standards. This is the layout. I think it is very helpful for your teachers to take a look at. Okay, and then we'll dive in now before I get into best practices, just what we know about the test. And again, this is based on the construct that was put out for the 2020 test, and then the state confirming in their last memo that that's what's going to move, we're going to do moving forward. Okay, so there is a Start Strong assessment score interpretation guide and test designs that's available to you. Okay, and here are some of the resources that are part of that. So first and foremost are the blueprints, and the blueprints tell us, just like was shared a few moments ago by Cheryl, what the categories are that are being tested. I'm going to need to put these glasses on here. And so they break it down by those categories. They talk about the domains, how many items per that domain in that category, and then the number of points per category. Okay, this can be found, I mentioned to you before, and I brought you to that website, the Start Strong website. This Start Strong score interpretation and test design manual can be found on that website. Okay, it's a 25-page document. They have more than what I just showed you. I'm going to also show you the blueprints in a minute. Okay, can I drop the link in the chat? Yes, I can. Thank you, Jason. Okay, and all of these, if you did come in late, are on that website. So you'll find everything in one place. Okay. Let's go back to this. So this is, I just gave you an example. So this happens to be Algebra 1. Okay, you can find all of them in that document. Now, ELA is a little bit different. You can see ELA is on one page, right? So grade 4 is identified, grade 5 through 10. I don't know why they pulled out grade 8 on its own, but they did. So if you're an ELA supervisor or principal or what have you, and you're just looking for ELA, it's all on this one document. I will make one comment about this because if you read things quickly, you might overlook this. If you notice, they talk about the number of points. Okay, so there are 18 or 20 total points that students will earn during the ELA portion of this test. But that comes out to about 8 to 10 items. So it's a very short test. That can be good, that can be bad. But I just want to point that out because when people first looked at this, they thought, oh, that means there's 18 questions or there's 20 questions. And the answer is no, there's actually only 8 to 10 questions. Okay, so you'll see what that looks like when we get to the released items in a minute. Any questions? I know I'm going fairly quickly just because I want to cover a lot of ground, but any additional questions about this topic? Okay, so I think that the person that just Oh, that said to everyone in the waiting room. Okay, well, I don't know why I did that. Hang on one second. Everyone in the meeting. Nobody's in the waiting room. All right, there you go. There's the link. Okay, and that's the link to the test design document that has these blueprints in them. Okay. Let's keep moving. Okay, so this was mentioned, Cheryl mentioned the support levels. And so there are 3 categories. So the 5 categories that we're used to were collapsed down into 3. So level 1 is strong support is needed. Level 2 is some support might be needed, and level 3 is less support. So your typical 4 and 5s, those kids who are scoring 4 and 5s, they're going to fall in that level 3 less support. Okay, it's that level 1 that we really want to look to. And as Cheryl pointed out, when we're looking at RTI or the kids that really need support, we're going to want to look at the kids that fall into that level 1 section. And I think I have a sample of what it looks like. Here you go. Okay, so this is what, if we compared NJSLA, these are where these students fall. It also includes the science, which makes sense. Okay. Okay. All right, so I mentioned that document before. It also has available for you the crosswalks. So for each grade, what do the items look like? So hopefully everybody's aware of the released items that Pearson created and have been available for us. The full bank of released items can be found at Resources New Meridian. But I'm also going to show you in a moment the New Jersey Digital Item Library, because that's my favorite way to find those released items. Okay, so I will show you that. Let me show you. Okay, when we're looking at the crosswalks, I'm sorry, yeah, these are the crosswalks, not the blueprints. When we're looking at the crosswalks, this shows you this is the 2020 test, the number of questions that were asked. It actually shows you the released item number. So if you wanted to, you could literally go search up what 9 questions were asked to these last year's, it would have been 5th graders, because these are the 4th. Oh no, I'm sorry. It would have been the 4th graders. They're just giving them 3rd grade content. Okay, so this is really, really useful because you can actually see the items that kids were asked. But this also reinforces that idea that they're only being asked anywhere between 8 to 10 questions. Okay, so again, I can kind of scroll through so that you can see that all the grade levels are pretty equal. 10 questions, 10 questions. Now, when we get into math, I want to scroll down. You can see that there are more questions being asked. Okay, so when you're planning out your test administration, will it take kids longer to do the math than the ELA? Looking at the number of questions, you could make that assumption. However, keep in mind, kids are going to have to read passages for ELA. Okay, so if we look at grade 4, they were asked 21 questions. Okay, in a minute, I'm going to show you how you can look up the item numbers if you would like to. Okay, so it says, can you clarify, should we only be testing students that have been previously enrolled? Okay, so this is something I am going to have to get. I don't want to give misinformation. The information I took on that slide was from the state's document. But if we're thinking prior year, kids typically take Algebra 1 first, right? So a geometry student may have taken Algebra 1 last year, right? But other districts do it differently, where they do Algebra 1 and then Algebra 2. So it's my understanding that because we're doing the prior year, it is likely only Algebra 1. And that's what it sounds like Michelle pointed out a little while ago, that was a district decision. But I will definitely get clarification on that. I'm sorry, I'm not super clear on that one. Okay. So we will just to kind of show you. So now grade 5 had 23 questions. So you can kind of get a sense. Grade 6 had 23. So you can just see that that the math section is going to be more questions. Okay. Just scroll down. So Michelle said that it was said in the training earlier today. So Michelle, I appreciate you updating me, because I'm gonna have to update the state to tell them that there's something on their website that says the other 2 grades. So we just want to clarify that. It also asks, Ed asked, are we developing and using all PNPs as we have for NJSLA? Anything that relates to the actual demographics, the testing platforms, all of those things, your testing coordinator should have been updated on those. Okay. Perfect. So Michelle said that's why I asked the DOE for clarification, because there was something on their website that said otherwise. Thank you, Michelle. And Michelle, if there's anything else that you found out today that you want to add, please do. Okay. So I want to show you, like I just mentioned, how you can identify those specific questions, if you like, to find out what was asked. Okay. You can do the New Meridian website, like I just showed you. You can actually Google the item code. Okay. It'll take you to the released items for that year, and then you just scroll down and look for that code. So for example, this question, this is the code M00346. Okay. The way that I like to use the released items is using the NJDOE Digital Item Library. Okay. It was not available until, I want to say, maybe a year or two, maybe 2 or 3 years ago now, that I'm realizing we haven't tested in a couple of years. And I can put this in the chat, but you can search by ELA or math. And why I think this is very useful for teachers specifically is you can search by standard. So let me pick grade 6, and you will see that the way it's sorted is by standard. So I can close this. Can I close it? Maybe not. And this is the language standard number 4. And then here's the list of all the other standards for grade 6. So what the teachers can do is take a look at the priority standards. They see that standard, language standard, one of the common ones is language standard number 4. So that's this one. And they can literally come in and pull those questions. If you saw a specific question that was asked on the crosswalk from last year and you want to find it, you can also search for it that way. Okay, looking in the item identifiers. Okay, but I really like this because when we talk about best practices, we talk about how do we integrate this into our daily instruction? How do we expose kids to higher level text, higher level questions? And so you want to have access to many different questions, right? So if reading informational text is more difficult for your students, this is standard 1. We know this is a priority standard. Look at all this whole bank of questions that you have. Okay. The only thing I would stay away from right now is I just wouldn't use the PCR questions. Let me look for one here. Anything that says PCR, that's the writing prompts. Okay, so they're not going to be doing a research simulation or a literary analysis or a narrative for this administration. Now, when you're thinking about spring NJSLA, absolutely, you want to use those. Okay, any questions or comments about the released items? Okay, super, super useful. And when we talk about best practices, we want to talk about engaging kids, doing things best we can that involve movement, involve group work, things like gallery walks, things like stations. Okay, so we have a whole different list here or visual of different instructional strategies that can be used. as well as different times of day. So for example, when it has admit tickets, okay, you might have a teacher that just does an NJSLA or a Start Strong item as an admit ticket and then goes on to their regular instruction. You might have, and this is a great one for math, a teacher that does side-by-side instruction. So they're going to use their own resource from their own curriculum, their own textbook, but then they find a matching NJSLA item to show kids how it might be asked. Okay, so a very nice way to do it so that the instruction is seamless. Okay, so lots of different ideas here, and I'm just going to share a couple. So here's one. We have a workshop called the Priority Standards and Start Strong. And we have lots of workshops about NJSLA, but this is just an example of a question, of an activity that we like to do. So you choose a passage, you pick a more difficult question, you have the kids read the passage, and then you just do a 4 corners. So you have the A, B, C, and D set up in the corners. The kids choose their answer, they go to that place, and they talk to their peers about why it's correct. Then we want them to share out. Now, let's just say everybody happens to all go to the right answer. Keep in mind, we asked you to pick a difficult question. So hopefully they won't all just follow each other and go to the right one. They have to be able to explain why they chose that one. Okay, you can play devil's advocate and have some discussion about why something is or is not the correct answer. What I like to do is focus on the fact that things are the best answer, right? Many of our NJSLA items that you'll see in Start Strong or in NJSLA in the spring, ask the students to provide the 2 best choices or the 3 pieces of evidence. So they're not necessarily picking one right answer. So that's a really important skill that you want to get kids comfortable with, that, and then connected to that, justifying their answer with evidence. Okay, and this starts at the earliest levels. I even say to teachers, K2, we are building habits. So it's never too early to talk about being a text detective and finding text evidence, even if for those younger grades, it's using pictures or using picture books. Okay. For math, I mentioned side-by-side instruction. It's not something that teachers should wait until right before a test. Instead, it should be seamless. And then let's just say that we're mostly using for our instruction our curricular resources, but we identify and we have kids talk about how are these the same? How are these different? How would you use this? How would you answer this question? Then it might be something you add to centers or stations. Okay, there was also a mention of a 4-square homework. What our math experts really like about that 4-square homework is you put 2 questions that are related to the current instructional unit that you're in, and then you put an NJSLA item, and now the 4th item I'm blanking out, and I'd have to get back to you on that, but I think it's an open-ended item where they have to justify their answer. But the idea is that kids start getting used to seeing those questions on a regular basis. Okay, any thoughts or questions about prep? How do we do this in a way that is aligning with what we know kids respond to, kids need, and is not, I really even hate to use the word prep, because this is just good teaching of the standards and making sure kids are exposed to the appropriate rigor. Thoughts or questions about that? Okay, so how do you, to end up today, before we get to our survey, how do you prepare for the Start Strong? I would say making sure teachers are aware of the priority standards, that they're doing that in their instruction, that they know what those prerequisites are, that they're using those released items, those rigorous test questions in an engaging manner. And if there is any need for PD to really promote that healthy approach, please feel free to reach out. What we're going to do is I'm going to put the survey link in the chat for you. And we're going to be following up because we have found that many districts have benefited. We've done a lot of work this summer with districts around these topics. So sitting with teams and talking about, have they been addressed? What needs to be revisited, right? Are there areas that teachers know sort of historically are problematic for kids. For example, our math experts always say fractions tend to be an issue. Okay, so using the crosswalks, using the released items, and making sure that you have an action plan going forward. Okay, so let me go ahead and grab that survey link for you. I'm going to put that in the chat. And then, like I said, there is going to be a recording of this. So I'm happy to share that with you. And Valerie, you just asked, can I share the slide? Which slide were you talking about? The one with the questions? With this Google Doc? Okay, so that makes sense. So what I'll do is, if you're interested in any of the resources, just add that to your survey, and then we'll follow up with you. Our resource sheet is really just the links to the website, but if you wanted any of these additional resources, I could make that available to you. Okay, any final thoughts or questions before we leave today? I really want to thank you, Michelle, so much, because there was that point of a little bit of confusion, the way it was written on the state's website and the way I translated it. So thank you so much for sharing that and making that clear. Okay, if anyone has additional questions, I'll hang out. Otherwise, thank you so much for attending, and I look forward to reaching out in the coming days. Have a great day.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I just want to thank you for the presentation. It was very, very helpful and informative.
Oh, good.
I just wanted to ask, there were several of the different Google slides that you had with some of the different things that we could show to our teachers as far as how to use the resources. If you could share those, that would be helpful.
The instructional strategies?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Yep, not a problem. So we, in the priority standards workshop, we literally go through each of these and provide examples and templates. So if that's something that your district might be interested in, we can follow up about that, but I can certainly share at least to have them thinking about, how do I do this in a way that's like a healthy approach, really embedded.
Yes. And
sure.
I think the way that you framed it, this is just good teaching. This is not like teaching to the test. This is just the way that educators should be thinking about the standards in general, even if
all the time, right?
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, whenever we go and do like an NJSLA workshop or a workshop around assessment, people are like, oh, why do we have to learn how to teach to the test? And that's the first thing we start with. It's really not about that. If we're doing good assessment, formative assessment, if we're doing good teaching of the standards, then we don't have to teach to the test. But that being said, you wouldn't throw somebody on a football field with not giving them the roles and the equipment they need, right? So we always want to make sure that kids are at least exposed to the unique ways that they might have to answer questions, or the ways that they're worded a little differently.
Makes perfect sense.
So, all right, well, absolutely. I made a note of that, and I can share that with you.
And where would you like me to, because I'm in the survey, that the Inspired Instruction evaluation form, you said if we wanted those slides, where would you like me to put it? Because it's really, unless
is there I think there's a section that asks you if you wanted additional PD.
Okay.
Just put the resources, put resources from today's workshop.
Okay, I will do that.
Okay.
Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions from anybody? Okay, well, I appreciate everybody's attendance today. Again, any follow-up at all, just you'll hear from us in the coming days, and we'd be happy to work with you, customize something for you. Okay, have a great day.
Thank you.
Alrighty, bye-bye.